Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sandy Allnock. I'm an artist and I am excited to get back to doing a little bit of pen and ink work. This time I'm going to be using a dip pen. I haven't found a pen and nib combo that I've really liked until recently, and I thought I'd use that for a project that I'm working on. So let's get going so I can answer the question, when do you use which technique for pen and ink? So I used to have, or still have, don't use anymore, my Tachikawa pen, and I switched out now for this Jacques Urbain pen. It's a bigger pen. It has that brass weight in the middle of it. I just like how it feels in my hand. And the nib that I put in it is a Nico G, which is the same nib I had used with the Tachikawa pen. But the two things that I like about this nib is that, for one, it gives me a really thin line, and for two, it allows me to draw for longer before I have to go re-dip into the ink bottle. And for this particular drawing, I chose to go with my same old carbon black ink because I was going to be watercoloring over it, so I needed it to be waterproof. And I could use any color when I use a dip pen because you don't have to fill a reservoir like you do with a fountain pen. Now this is a fountain pen, and I decided to combine the two pens so that I could create a focal image in the foreground. The dark-eyed junco is in a bunch of flowers, a bunch of the lilacs, and I wanted that to stand out in the front of the picture. And I wanted to use the line weight of that one with the medium nib from my TWSBI Eco pen, and then switch out periodically to make all the detail work with the Nico G nib in the dip pen. So using the carbon black ink for both of them works great, but the fountain pen has a reservoir in it, so you're not dipping constantly, which makes fountain pens just more convenient. But in terms of questions that I get in my video that's called, I think, Getting Started with Pen and Ink, I get lots of comments on that from people asking, like, how do you know when to use which of the different line techniques that I showed? Because I showed a whole bunch of them in that. And really it depends on what I'm drawing. And in this video, I'm going to focus on hatching, not cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is when you make lines that crisscross and make X's and basically making that kind of a pattern. But I consider hatching to be anything that's lines that go in the same direction. Now, sometimes people will say hatching in that way, in mentally thinking through it, that they should all be vertical, horizontal, at the same angle, etc. But I call it hatching when it's just following the contour of the object that you're drawing. And here it's following the contour of the bird. So wherever the bird's feathers point, that's where I want my lines to go. And they're just parallel lines next to each other. Now there are those old-fashioned, really great artists who can just make one line along the whole top of the bird and make it break up and start again and break up and start again to make one line that just sings, and it's really clean and clear. Mine are not that way. I'm a messy sketcher, and I'm okay with that. But what I'm doing is making my lines follow the contour of the feathers. Wherever you would pet the bird, however those feathers move around the bird, that's where the lines are going to go. Now you have to watch when you're doing this that your lines, as you create a group of lines, a whole row of lines, that you don't create bands across the entire chest of the bird. So I'm making some of my lines longer and shorter so that I don't end up with all the strokes always ending up in the same spot, unless I'm using a really thin nib like this, which allows me to kind of get the pen into some of those little areas so I can add just the tiniest little line. Now this bird has a black head on it, and it's kind of hard to see some of that detail. When I'm drawing anything that has that much black in it, I'll take it into my phone or into Photoshop and just pump up the contrast so I can see where the highlights and shadows are. So if you're drawing a bird like this, you might need to do that. But I'm trying to add in lines going in the same direction, but I'm adding that value by just adding more lines in between each grouping of lines, if that makes sense. Now, you can also do this with cross-hatching, but it's not going to give you the form of the bird as much because you're going to get lines that maybe go horizontal on top of this in order to get those darker values. So that's why I'm doing the hatching to continue creating the form of the bird by letting the lines move along where the bird is going and all the feathers are going, as opposed to I'm just going to make crisscrosses because it'll get darker faster, because this can be a somewhat tedious process, and this is all in real time, so you can see it's just, make your lines, make them slowly, and fit them in between each other in order to create the shapes and the values that you need. Now I've switched over to the thicker pen, the medium nib, and by the way, I have the Eco TWSBI in both the medium, the fine nib, and the extra fine. And even the extra fine is not as fine as this Nico G nib. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not just switching to a different one of my fountain pens. Now, once I added in more of the thicker lines with the medium nib pen, I can switch back to the thinner pen to add more detailed sections. And I'm looking at the overall value in the reference photo that I was using to try to make sure that I get my lights, my mediums, and my darks into the picture. Because for this one, I'm going to have all of those lines that are in the background section done in the thinner pen, and I need them to recede. And in order for them to recede, I need to have some good strong values in the foreground portion, because this is going to be the cover of my Phenology book. If you've been following my crazy Phenology posts every month on the first of each month, I've been doing a Phenology project each month, and this is going to be the cover for all of it with the things in the background. That's all the progression of a blooming lilac, and then the flowers in the front are the lilacs. So I wanted this to kind of carry through some of the themes that are inside the book, which I'll show you in just a few minutes. Now, as for the other types of different techniques shown in that other video, sometimes I'll use them in concert with other lines. But the most common one that I use are these basic hatching lines. If I get into like little scrubby trees, then that is like an automatic scribbly line for me. I don't tend to use just hatching lines like this. But for a lot of things, here I'm using those plain old hatch lines, but in a different way for the leaf to create the veins. And those are going to be veins that will be lighter than the leaf color. For the rest of these flowers in this foreground section, I switched again to the medium nib to contain all that value in the front. All the darker areas are going to be in that foreground, because everything else is going to need to recede. If everything in your entire drawing is the same complexity and value, and there's no place to rest either in darks or in lights, it can be really hard to just visually make an assessment of what's in the picture. So think about where you're going to give your audience rest. Now, for some of this area down in the whole thing, I need to figure out how to darken some of these areas in between the flowers and the leaves. And in order to create that darkness, I'm just using a vertical line. And I'm going to use that throughout. Anywhere where I just want to darken something, I tend to do that just to create almost a gray value in order to darken that section. Now, for the next batch of flowers behind, these are going to be outlined in the thinner nib instead of in the thicker one. So that's going to give me a value change from the foreground to the midground. But I'm not going to get crazy with a different kind of line to use. I'm not going to go using scribbly lines or anything in these, because I want these to start fading backwards and getting more into the distance. And if you change up and use too many different lines in one drawing, it can get really confusing. So don't try to use them all at once. Try a drawing with different kinds of lines in it, but make them each a separate drawing until you kind of get a sense of what your style is and whether or not you want that much cacophony. So for all the little lilacs in the background, all these little branches. Just going to use the Nico G nib and that dip pen to create these really thin types of lines so that I can add watercolor to all of it when it's all finished. I'm not going to share the entire watercolor portion with you here because this video is going to be long enough as is, but I wanted to be sure to at least talk about the pen and ink types of techniques that I'm using here. So you can see the bird and those front flowers are darker than everything else, so I've pushed it to get different value between those sections. And in adding watercolor to it, the pen and ink is done with a waterproof ink, so the watercolor is going to go over it without making any messes at all. Now notice how light and airy the lines are on the chest of the bird. They're still the same hatch lines, but they come across looking like a white chest, even though there's lines there. So don't always think that you have to leave something completely white in order for it to appear white, especially once color is added. So this is, as I said, the cover of my Phenology book. And yes, I have made a book already. I know it's only April, but I've already made the book because I'm going to be taking this wheel with me next weekend. And I'll tell you about that in a second. So here's the cover all finished. And what I've done is put the book together for the year so I can just insert all of my Phenology wheels as I get them finished. So first off, I wanted to show you my new compass. And this is one where you can actually put something more than a golf pencil in it. There's a lot of them that can only handle a golf pencil. This one can handle a knife. So if you want to cut something round and that sort of thing, just make sure the knife is turned the right direction. And you could also put something like a Sharpie in it. Sharpie is about the biggest pen you could put in it. So it worked really great, though, for this. I'll be enjoying it all year long as I make the rest of my wheels. When I cut those out, I left a panel sticking out on one side so that I could punch holes in them. And I used little rings for them, and they're basically key rings. So they're real easy to put in and out. And each of the pages is a double thickness of black cardstock so that it's nice and heavy and it'll hold up hopefully in time. Now, the pages can lay open like this, or they'll just fold over completely, saving more room, which is great. I don't know what I'm going to put on this. I'm thinking bugs, because I don't know if I'll ever do a month of bugs, but it would be fun to put bugs in here. And I wrote out what Phenology is and kind of what my plan was for the book so that if somebody else finds this book someday, or if I look at it in 10 years and go, what the heck was I doing? That explains it to myself. And then got started with putting the monthly pages in. Now this one is, I'm calling it my table of contents. It's just choosing one of my pictures from the month and putting it into a bigger wheel that way. Now my first month was all green things. And I live in the Pacific Northwest, so green is here in winter as well as summer. I kind of wish I had put that January on the left-hand side, and I could have just glued a piece of paper over top of it and flipped it upside down, but such is life. I didn't think through that when I was putting this together, and it is what it is, but it still works. So on the ends of each one of these, that little flappy do, I'm putting the number of minutes that we have gained, or later on in the year, it'll be the minutes lost as the days get shorter later. But for now, I'm enjoying seeing how many more minutes we are getting every month in sunshine, or at least in daylight. So my second month was in gouache, and it was all skies. Now this one, unfortunately, I was focused on putting February out to the right-hand side. And yeah, now the picture is sideways. I might repaint it. I could repaint over top of that, or I could just leave it. I think I'll probably just leave it. So we gained 85 minutes, and I'm keeping track of whether beginning or end of the day is giving us more minutes. That's been kind of interesting to follow along. I'll be curious to see how the rest of the year progresses. And so each one of these was very easy to tape and then just do some blobby paintings because my health was not such that I could do more than that for quite some time in February. Now this was the March one, and I did glue over a piece of paper to turn March the other direction when I added it in here, because I thought of that at that point. And each of these are birds that I either saw or heard that day. I used the Merlin app to figure out what they are. Ended up having to go out to the waterfront to find some water birds at some point because I was running out of new birds. I did mark the time change date. and, was trying to figure out the math of all of this, because when I looked at the time change, the morning had a 0 time change because, due to the time change, the beginning of the month and the end of the month had the very same, believe it or not, the identical moment of sunrise. So all of the daylight added, I guess, is at the end of the day. Because look at that, 6:49 in the morning for sunrises, a month apart. That's kind of crazy. So let me know if that hour should be attributed to the beginning of the day or the end of the day. I wasn't really sure, so I put 0 for the morning and all 103 minutes at the end of the day because I was confused. I don't do math. They told me there would be no math if I was an artist, and I'm trying to lean on that. But all of these are colored in the Staedtler pigment pens, which is why this is going with me next weekend to the NAMTA show in Seattle, the National Art Materials Association, I think is what it is. And so I'll be demonstrating at the Staedtler booth. So come see me if you're there. And April, I have done April 1st, and this ossoberry is a plant that back in January, the app told me was honeysuckle. And it was wrong because now I know it's ossoberry. And it looks kind of honeysuckle-ish, but it ain't honeysuckle, that's for sure. So each of the other months, I don't have all the wheels made yet, but I have noted which one goes where, so I keep all the pages set for them. And at the back of the book is my week by week. I have 2 pages for that. And every week, I just include something that I saw on my walks that doesn't fit into whatever I'm doing for the subject for that month. So if I'm doing birds, then I have somewhere to document an interesting bud. Or if I'm doing buds and a new bird comes through, I can document the bird. That sort of thing. And I thought that would be a fun little addition to give myself. So that is my Phenology wheel and its status, and a little bit of pen and ink drawing. Hope it was helpful. Let me know if there's a particular technique that you saw in that other video that you would like me to demonstrate, because I'd be happy to do that. And just leave me a comment. I will talk to you guys later. In the meantime, get out there and create something every day. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.